Joining us now, live and exclusive, is senior Supreme Court advocate, BJP leader, former Rajya Sabha MP Mahesh Jethmalani now joins us on this broadcast. Mr. Jethmalani, welcome. You did a press conference this morning in which you came out in support of Gautam Adani and the Adani group, saying that the charges against them have been misrepresented before the Indian public. Can you first begin by explaining to our viewers, when you say you're not speaking for Adani and you're speaking out in your personal capacity, why have you chosen to come out in this fashion when this matter is before court and speak and voice your opinion on this? Let's start from there, Mr. Jethmalani.
Well, let me tell you something. This is not a Adani-inspired press conference or statement by me, right? I mean, I just look at the indictment and I find that the entire indictment is extremely weak. Not only is it weak, it smacks of malefice and it smacks of, ulterior motive. And by the way, there's nothing wrong before a court, maybe a US court. I'm not impressed by all that. Ultimately, what we go into is the facts and the evidence that is in support. This is a hatchet job, Rahul, make no mistake about it. It may sound very grave and serious, but frankly speaking, first of all, the indictment is only the very preliminary start of proceedings in the matter of what is alleged in that indictment. All right? There's a long way to go. But apart from that, it should never have come, because the case seems to be that US bondholders, those who subscribed to Adani Green's energy bonds in the US, were misled because it violated a precondition of their subscription that it was compliant with law. And in fact, there is no allegation whatsoever that any bribes were paid in India. There is an allegation that there was a conspiracy to pay bribes, right? But if bribes were in fact actually not paid, then the bondholders haven't been misled. This is a hit job because it creates a panic under the bondholders and generally sends ripples across all economies where Adani is listed.
So let's take this one by one. You're calling this a hatchet hit job. You're also saying there's no evidence. It can be argued that the evidence will be laid by the prosecutors when the trial actually begins. If they put all of it out in the indictment, then those who are being accused know the evidence that is against them and can prepare, and therefore they've let the charges be known, but the specific evidence will emerge during the trial.
No. How does anybody contest it? How does anybody contest the indictment itself? Unless you can't, this is a breach of natural justice. You have to let a person whom you've seriously damaged, right, know what the nature of the evidence is which he has to face. A. B. In any event, apart from the indictment and its frailties, right, what is the Congress government jumping on? Where is the evidence let them come out with the evidence before the Congress party says there must be, because it's not even the case of the indictment that bribes were indeed paid in India.
Can I quote to you a few paragraphs from this judgment? Because I heard your press conference, I went through the indictment. I want to quote to you paragraph 47, which alleges that Gautam Adani and others devised a scheme to offer, authorize, and make and promise to make bribe payments to Indian officials. SECI's inability to find purchasers jeopardized the lucrative LOAs and corresponding revenue, and the Indian Energy Company's subsidiary and the US issuer anticipated receiving from the manufacturing link project. As a result, the defendants, Gautam Adani, Sagar Adani, Vidit Jain, Ranjit Gupta, among others, devised a scheme to authorize, make and promise to make bribe payments to Indian government officials in exchange for the deal.
All right. Enough. Is that what you want me to comment on that part, or is there anything more?
No, I have more paragraphs, but let's take it one by one.
Now, that says conspiracy, right? So there was some scheme to bribe. That doesn't say that conspiracy fructified. Therefore, and it can't, because they've not named who the bribe takers were. If bribes were actually paid, names would have been available to the persons who issued that indictment. They would then have to say that the following persons, who are the main people, apart from those who are bribe givers, are the bribe takers. We're not told who the bribe takers are and what is the evidence, what is the quantum of the bribe, where was it paid, when was it paid? Nothing. There's a conspiracy. Now, even for the conspiracy, we don't know the evidence today, right? So those who jumped in, now I'm on the political class in India, who jumped in, you blindly accepted an indictment when there is no evidence whatsoever in support of that indictment. Now
Because
that's
the
why
indictment also speaks about foreign government official number 1, who was in power from 2019 to 2024, which seems to be a very clear allusion to Jagan Reddy. And that's something that the TDP government in Andhra Pradesh already says. You're saying they haven't named anyone, but if you see the manner in which the indictment is framed, it's very clear that the reference to bribe for stepping in to help ensure that Andhra Pradesh power distribution companies bought the power which was being manufactured and given to the Solar Energy Corporation, that individual seems to be Jagan Reddy.
Now, if that seems to be Jagan Reddy, why can't they name him? They've named everybody else. I mean, the person who's taken the bribes is actually the immediate cause of the alleged awarding of the contracts. Are they being partial because he's not a BJP person? Why is this indictment so silent? In any case, it's not said that monies were paid to him. Monies were proposed to be paid to him. Please be very clear that there is no consummated offense. It's the inchoate offense of conspiracy, which is extremely difficult to prove.
But that's not what the indictment says. I want to quote to you paragraph 81, and I know that you're the lawyer on the show, so I don't want to stretch myself too thin, but I want to quote to you paragraph 81 of the indictment, which says, at or in connection with that meeting, Gautam Adani paid or promised a bribe to Andhra Pradesh government officials to cause the relevant Andhra Pradesh government entities to enter into a power supply agreement with SECI for the purchase of 7,000 megawatts of power capacity. So it doesn't say what you just said, which is just the promise. The indictment actually says paid or promised to pay a bribe.
There is no paid. It said paid or promised to pay. Right?
Yeah.
They have been very careful. That paid is a sleight of hand. That paid, there is no warrant for issuing that. It's a very, very cleverly drafted indictment. It's a smear campaign. Or come out with the evidence.
Why do you think it's a smear campaign? What do you think is going on over here? You said it's a hatchet hit job. Why is a US court interested in a hit job against one of India's most important industrial groups?
Scorched earth policy, right? They have done nothing against Hindenburg. This is Biden's scorched earth policy before he goes. He wants to make it extremely difficult. I think the trigger may well have been the fact that Gautam Adani congratulated Prime Minister Trump profusely in public on his becoming president-elect. Right? That seems to have been apart from the fact that there's a pattern of hit and run, right? Till today, nobody in the US, mind you, as far as the Hindenburg hit was concerned, the pattern is very, very clear, right? You use American entities first the Hindenburg research analysts, and then the US courts, the indictment, the Attorney General's office, to do this at a very timely occasion. Every time it's before Parliament starts, there's almost you can say that there's something called similar fact evidence power. If a wife is found dead in a bathtub once, it's mere coincidence. But if it happens 3 times, there's something called similar fact evidence. This is now becoming a repeat pattern which suggests something. An inference is to be drawn in law from that. Be very clear.
So, but the indictment came a month ago. It was just opened a couple of days ago. Surely a judge in New York is not working on a parliament calendar.
I think you're being too charitable towards the judge in New York. It happened 2 days before Parliament. Why? And why did the Hindenburg hit happen two days before Parliament? Was everything pure coincidence? In any case, let's stick with the facts.
No, it's been unsealed. The point is, it's been unsealed a couple of days before Parliament, but the indictment itself was written last month, sir.
So why did they release it now? The release is the important thing. When do you publish it? If you had, what was please explain the time gap.
No, sir, it's not my job to explain the time gap. That's for the United States judge who's leveling these charges.
Yeah.
It's for him to, our job is to ask probing questions.
Yeah,
sure.
I don't expect you to do this.
No, sure.
I'm saying they should be explaining this. Anyway, right, let me get back to the Hindenburg episode. In Hindenburg's episode, we pointed out that Hindenburg was only the front guy. He was the research analyst who gave them inputs. The the principal involved was a chap called Michael Landon, right, who ran a fund there. His wife was being examined. Anla Cheng, who was a joint holder in that trust fund, was being investigated by the US authorities for being a Chinese agent. She was accused of conducting espionage activities for the Chinese government. Nobody has denied that. No US government official has denied it. No US politician has denied it. And the man who is leading the charge against that self-same Anla Chang happens to be Marco Rubio, who is now the Secretary of State. Hopefully the truth will come out now. But
Are you hoping that when on the 20th of January there is a transfer of power to the 47th President Donald Trump, that these cases will then be viewed in different light by the new Trump administration?
I don't know what President Trump will do, but certainly there's been a conspiracy of non-activity after the Adani side of the story has come out, right? Are we wrong that the Hindenburg was a hit job by a person who owned the funds, who is being investigated by Congress for serious charges of espionage?
Now, you're asking the Congress to lay out evidence. I want to quote to you what its media cell in charge, Jairam Ramesh, said. He says this is a moment of reckoning for our institutions, saying it's the ED, the CBI, SEBI, whose job it is to act. It's not the job of a political party to lay out evidence. It is the institutions that need to rise to the task and they need to probe.
But Rahul, as far as the institutions are concerned, they have no evidence of any payment whatsoever. Why should you start an investigation which is bereft of any evidence if you say that this is going to be forthcoming? Right? If somebody has told you that the procedure is, the evidence is not to accompany the indictment, that happens at a later stage, which I strongly dispute, then let's wait for the evidence. You can't make a blanket statement, right? No matter how high the authority is. I'm not impressed by a US court issuing this indictment. The Congress party may be. I'm not a slave, an insect of the comprador class that thinks that everything that comes from America is right.
Let's spend a moment, because you wear two hats, one as an ace advocate and the second as a practicing politician. What do you think of the political ramification of this charge, that a particular corporate group is extremely close to this government and the powers that be, and that's the charge that Rahul Gandhi is constantly now looking to press?
Look, keep the politics out of it. The politics is started by the Congress party. I'm only rebutting it, right? It is unfair for an entire political party to rely upon a scrap of paper called an indictment without evidence and condemn a man. That's all I'm saying. Somebody had to come forward and do so. I think the Adani group has done yeoman service for this country. In Haifa, they invested $1 billion and stopped all other bidders from coming in. It was a very crucial strategic decision for us. I look at it as a nationalist. Now, if there is corruption involved, show me the evidence, show me the bribe trail.
No, you're saying that there's no talk of actual bribes being paid. Mr. Jethmalani, yes. Allow me to quote to you paragraph 77, which says, Adani Green executives kept track of the bribes, creating and maintaining multiple internal records of bribes that had been paid or promised to numerous Indian states and Indian state officials to induce them to cause the Indian states to buy renewable energy from the Solar Energy Corporation of India. So, kept track of the bribes, creating and maintaining multiple records of bribes that had been paid. That's what the indictment says.
But, Rahul, kept tracks of the bribes paid, right? Why don't you just come out and say bribes were indeed paid to these officials? What do you mean kept track of the bribes? Please explain that phrase. When Indian courts make an indictment, right, they say between such and such period, there was a conspiracy hatched to pay bribes to get such favors from public servants in India, and pursuant to that conspiracy, bribes were in fact paid on such and such date. Where is that?
No, but if it talks about records of bribes, can one not imagine that the prosecutors have access to these records of bribe, which is why they put it down in the indictment?
They may well have. They may well have. But until that comes out in the public domain, right, you're entitled to say there's no evidence.
What do you think will happen next?
Well, I mean, there's a long journey, as I said. Right? I really don't know what will happen next, but I think it's time that, we hit back. I mean, I think it's really time that people who are concerned about this kind of extrajudicial reach, right, just to embarrass the government in power because they think he's close to them, right, is wrong. You are meddling in our corporate affairs, and you are meddling with the stability of our economy. Because let's face it, the market was hit. Adani's lost a lot of money, $2.44 billion, and retail investors were hit.
Okay, I leave it over there. Jairam Ramesh put out the Congress's perspective on these charges. Mahesh Jethmalani giving a political legal counter to this and explaining why. And I think that's an important point to keep in mind. Don't just imagine that this is true. Look at the evidence, weigh the evidence that is before us, and then let's see where this gets. Don't just imagine that what is being said, just because it's being said in a US court of law, is actually the gospel truth. These charges will need to stand in a court of law. Mahesh Jethmalani, for joining us on this broadcast. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you.